Wyoming Territory, 1885. The thunderstorm had swept through Clearwater Valley with a fury that left the landscape transformed. Muddy trails carved new paths down the hillsides, and the creek that meandered through the valley had swollen to twice its usual size. It was on this rain-soaked morning that 9-year-old Lily O'Connor stood frozen in place, her small hand gripping the handle of the wicker basket filled with freshly gathered eggs. 20 yards ahead of her on the narrow trail, a magnificent Palomino horse lay on its side, its golden coat caked with mud, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. The animal's labored breathing created small clouds in the crisp morning air. Lily looked back toward the small cabin where her mother was preparing breakfast, then to the injured horse that was clearly suffering. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, setting her basket down carefully and approaching with slow, deliberate steps. The horse's eyes rolled with panic, but it was too weak to rise. Lily knew horses. They'd had one until last winter when pneumonia took poor Samson, leaving them without a way to make the journey to town except on foot. She knelt in the mud, ruining her only good dress, and gently stroked the Palomino's neck. "I'll get help," she promised. But before she could rise, the sound of hoofbeats came thundering down the trail. "Indigo," a deep voice called out. "Indigo, where are you, boy?" A young man on a chestnut mare came into view, his worried expression shifting to shock at the sight of the little girl kneeling beside his fallen horse. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the ground. "What happened here?" he asked, his voice softening as he took in the little girl's concerned face. "I found him like this, mister," Lily said. "I think his leg is broken." The man, tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-kissed brown hair and eyes the color of freshly turned soil, knelt beside her. His face was clean-shaven, and despite the worry-etching lines between his brows, Lily could tell he wasn't much older than 25. "I'm Isaac Remington," he said, offering his hand to Lily. "That's my best horse, Indigo." "I'm Lily O'Connor," she replied solemnly, her small hand disappearing into his calloused palm. "We need to help him." Isaac assessed the injury with practiced hands. "You're right about the leg. He must have slipped in the mud during the storm." He glanced at the little girl. "You weren't afraid of him?" "Horses don't scare me," Lily said simply. "Mama says I was born in a saddle." Something about her innocent bravery touched Isaac. "Well, Miss Lily, I need to get help for Indigo. My ranch is about a mile from here. We live just down there." Lily pointed to the small, weather-beaten cabin nestled among the pines. A thin wisp of smoke curled from the stone chimney. "Mama might know what to do. She's good with animals." Before Isaac could respond, a woman's voice called out, "Lily, where are those eggs, sweetheart?" Isaac looked up to see a young woman hurrying along the trail, her honey-blonde hair escaping from a simple knot at the nape of her neck. She wore a faded blue dress, patched in several places, but impeccably clean. Despite the simple attire, there was an undeniable grace to her movements, a quiet dignity in the way she carried herself. "Mama," Lily called, "this horse is hurt, and this is Mr. Remington. The horse's name is Indigo, and I think his leg is broken." The woman's eyes, a startling shade of green, widened as she took in the scene. "Oh my," she breathed, gathering her skirts to kneel beside her daughter. "Poor creature." "Ma'am," Isaac touched the brim of his hat respectfully. "Isaac Remington. I apologize for the trouble." "Naomi O'Connor," she replied, her attention already on the horse. "And it's no trouble at all. We can't leave an animal suffering." Her hands moved with confidence over the horse's leg. "Compound fracture," she said grimly. "Lily, run to the cabin and bring my medicine bag, the leather one under my bed, and the whiskey from the top shelf." Lily darted away, leaving Isaac staring at Naomi in surprise. "You have medical training, Mrs. O'Connor?" A shadow passed over her face. "Miss," she corrected gently. "And yes, my father was a doctor back east. I assisted him for years." She met Isaac's gaze directly. "Your horse can be saved, Mr. Remington, but he'll need extensive care, and he can't be moved far." Isaac nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. There was something about Naomi O'Connor that struck him, a strength that had nothing to do with physical power, a beauty that transcended her simple clothes and work-roughened hands. "I own the Rocking R Ranch," he said. "It's the largest spread in the valley. I have men I can send, supplies, whatever you need." Naomi's expression remained neutral, but Isaac caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Pride. He recognized it immediately. He'd seen it often enough in the mirror. "We'll need splints, clean bandages," she said after a moment. "And a shelter for him. He can't be exposed to the elements during recovery." "I'll build one," Isaac said immediately. "Right here, if that's acceptable to you. My men can bring the materials today." Lily returned, struggling with the heavy leather bag and a small bottle of amber liquid. Naomi took them with a grateful smile. "Now, Mr. Remington," she said, "I need your help to steady him while I set this bone." As they worked together, Isaac couldn't help but notice the contradiction that was Naomi O'Connor. Her hands were gentle yet firm, her voice soft but authoritative. She moved with the confidence of a trained physician, yet there was vulnerability in the way she occasionally brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're a long way from a doctor's practice, Miss O'Connor," he observed as they finished splinting the horse's leg. She paused, her hands still on the bandage. "Life takes unexpected turns, Mr. Remington." "Isaac, please." "Isaac," she conceded with a small smile that transformed her face, revealing dimples and lighting up those remarkable green eyes. Life rarely follows the paths we plan. It was the first of many conversations that would unfold between them, though neither knew it yet. For as Isaac Remington rode back to his ranch to gather men and supplies, his thoughts remained with the beautiful widow and her brave daughter in their modest cabin. What had brought them to this remote corner of Wyoming? Why did a woman with medical training live in such isolation? And why did he feel such an inexplicable pull to return, beyond his concern for his injured horse? 3 days later, a small but sturdy shelter stood near the O'Connor cabin. Inside, Indigo rested on clean straw, his splinted legs supported and healing well under Naomi's care. Isaac had brought his foreman and 2 ranch hands to build the structure, working from dawn until dusk to complete it before another storm rolled in. "It's mighty fine work," Naomi said, standing beside Isaac as they observed the finished shelter. "Your men are skilled. Best crew in Wyoming." Isaac agreed, though his pride in the statement seemed tempered by something else. "Miss O'Connor, I've been meaning to ask. Mr. Remington." Lily came bounding from the cabin, a plate of cookies in her hands. "Mama and I made these for you and your men. They're oatmeal because we don't have sugar for proper ones." Isaac accepted the plate with exaggerated reverence. "Well now, Miss Lily, these look like the finest cookies in the territory." He took one and bit into it, his expression genuine as he savored the simple treat. "Delicious." Naomi watched the interaction with a mix of pleasure and caution. In the 3 days since Isaac Remington had appeared in their lives, Lily had blossomed with excitement. The girl had few opportunities to interact with others. Their nearest neighbors were 5 miles away, and trips to town were rare. But it was dangerous to grow attached. Naomi knew this all too well. "Lily, please take those to the men by the horses," she said gently. "They've worked hard today." When Lily was out of earshot, Isaac turned to Naomi. "I've been wondering how you manage out here alone," he said, his tone careful. "This is rough country for a woman and child." "We manage fine," Naomi replied, perhaps too quickly. She softened her tone. "But thank you for your concern. The thing is," Isaac continued, removing his hat and running a hand through his thick brown hair, "I could use someone with medical knowledge at the ranch. My men are always getting themselves injured, and the nearest doctor is in Laramie. It's a 2-day ride." Naomi stiffened. "Are you offering me employment, Mr. Remington?" "Isaac," he reminded her. "And yes, I suppose I am. Room and board for you and Lily, plus a fair wage." He hesitated, watching her expression carefully. "You wouldn't have to struggle so hard." "We don't struggle," Naomi said, though the patched dress and the worn soles of her boots told a different story. "And we value our independence." Isaac nodded slowly. "I understand. But the offer stands." He glanced toward the cabin with its sagging roof and weather-beaten walls. "Winter's coming, Miss O'Connor. It gets mighty cold in these parts." Before Naomi could respond, the sound of an approaching wagon drew their attention. A man and woman, both middle-aged and well-dressed, were making their way up the muddy trail. "The Hendersons," Naomi murmured, a hint of relief in her voice. "Our neighbors from down the valley." As the wagon pulled up, Mrs. Henderson waved enthusiastically. "Naomi, dear, we came as soon as the roads were passable. Thomas brought the medicine for Lily's cough." Her eyes widened when she noticed Isaac. "Oh, Mr. Remington." What brings you to the O'Connor place? Isaac explained about his injured horse, but Naomi noticed the significant look that passed between the Hendersons. It was no small thing for one of the wealthiest ranchers in the territory to be building shelters on the property of a widow with a questionable past. Because that's what they all assumed, that she was a widow. It was easier, safer that way. The truth was far more complicated. As they all chatted politely, Mrs. Henderson drew Naomi aside. "My dear," she whispered, "you should consider Mr. Remington's offer if he's made one." A woman alone with a child. She left the sentence hanging. "We're doing fine, Martha," Naomi insisted. "But for how long?" The older woman pressed. "That roof won't last another winter." "And what about Lily's education?" The question stabbed at Naomi's conscience. They were the same ones that kept her awake at night. But accepting help meant accepting vulnerability, and vulnerability had nearly destroyed her once before. Across the yard, Isaac was deep in conversation with Thomas Henderson, but his eyes kept drifting to Naomi. There was something about this woman that intrigued him beyond her beauty or her medical skills. It was the mystery that surrounded her, the resilience evident in her every movement. Isaac Remington had built his ranch from nothing, working tirelessly since he was 18 years old. At 26, he owned the most prosperous spread in the county, yet success had brought isolation of its own. The loneliness of command, his father used to call it. But here, watching Naomi with her daughter, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of possibility. Little did he know that Naomi was harboring secrets that could shatter any possibility before it began. The first snowfall came early that year, blanketing the valley in white a full 3 weeks before anyone expected. In the shelter beside the O'Connor cabin, Indigo continued to heal, though more slowly than Naomi had hoped. The cold made the horse's leg ache, and she worried about infection setting in. "We need to keep him warmer," she told Isaac during one of his now regular visits. "This shelter isn't enough." Isaac nodded, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "I've been thinking about that. My men could reinforce the walls, add a proper door." "That would help," Naomi agreed, rubbing her gloved hands together for warmth. Isaac noticed the gesture. "You're cold. Let's continue this discussion inside." Naomi hesitated only briefly before leading him toward the cabin. Over the past weeks, she'd grown accustomed to his presence, even found herself looking forward to his visits. He always brought supplies, coffee, sugar, flour, claiming they were payment for Naomi's care of his horse. She accepted them reluctantly, knowing Lily needed the nourishment. Inside the cabin, Lily was sitting at the small table, laboriously copying letters onto a slate. She jumped up when they entered. "Mr. Remington, did you bring more books?" Her excitement was palpable. Isaac grinned, producing a slim volume from his coat pocket. "As promised, Miss Lily. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. A bit advanced, perhaps, but your mother can help you with the difficult words." Lily clutched the book to her chest, her face radiant. "Thank you. Mama, can we read it tonight?" "After your lessons and chores," Naomi said, though she couldn't help smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. She gestured for Isaac to take a seat at the table while she put coffee on to boil. The cabin was small but meticulously clean. A patchwork quilt brightened the single bed that Naomi shared with Lily. A smaller trundle bed was tucked beneath it. The furnishings were sparse but functional. The table and chairs, a small bookshelf filled with well-worn volumes, a rocking chair beside the hearth. Isaac noticed a framed medical certificate partially hidden behind a jar on the shelf. "University of Pennsylvania Medical School," he read aloud. "Outstanding achievement in surgical assistance and nursing. Naomi Elizabeth Oswald, 1878. He looked up at her. "Oswald, not O'Connor." Naomi froze, her hand tightening on the coffee pot. "My maiden name," she said softly, not meeting his eyes. "I reverted to it after I was widowed." Isaac nodded, though something in her hesitation made him wonder. 7 years ago, he calculated. "You must have been very young." 18, she said, setting a steaming cup before him. "Lily was just 2. And you came west after your husband passed?" Lily, who had been listening while pretending to study, piped up. "I don't remember my father. Mama says he was very brave." "I'm sure he was," Isaac said gently, though his eyes remained on Naomi, noting the tightness around her mouth, the way she busied herself unnecessarily with the coffee. "Lily, please go gather more firewood," Naomi said suddenly. The pile by the door is getting low. When the girl had donned her coat and gone outside, Naomi sat across from Isaac, her hands wrapped around her own cup. Mr. Remington, Isaac, he corrected automatically. Isaac, she conceded. Your interest in our circumstances is concerning. He straightened, surprised by her directness. I don't mean to pry. Don't you? She met his gaze steadily. You visit almost daily. You bring gifts for Lily, supplies we haven't asked for. You offer employment without knowing my qualifications beyond what you've observed with your horse. I've been impressed by what I've observed, Isaac said quietly. And I genuinely need someone with medical knowledge at the ranch. Is that the only reason for your interest? Her question hung in the air between them. Isaac considered his words carefully. No, he finally admitted. It's not. I find myself thinking about you, both of you, even when I'm miles away at the ranch. I wonder if you're warm enough, if you have enough to eat. He leaned forward slightly. I wonder what brought a clearly educated woman to this remote cabin, and why she chooses to live in near poverty when opportunities exist. Naomi's eyes flashed. Our life may appear impoverished to you, Mr. Remington, but we have what matters most. Our freedom, our dignity, and each other. I meant no offense, Isaac said quickly. But winter is settling in, and that roof. The roof will hold. Naomi interrupted, though they both knew it was wishful thinking. Already, snow was finding its way through the aging shingles, forming small drifts in the corners of the cabin. Isaac ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Naomi, please. Let me help. If not for yourself, then for Lily. At the mention of her daughter, Naomi's resolve wavered. Lily deserved better than this hand-to-mouth existence, this isolation from other children, from proper schooling. I don't accept charity, she said after a long moment. Then accept employment, Isaac countered. Room and board at the main house for you and Lily. A fair wage for your medical services. Lily could attend the small school we've established for the ranch children. He hesitated, then added, and no questions about your past. You have my word. The offer was tempting, more than tempting. It represented everything Naomi wanted for Lily: security, education, community. But it also meant proximity to Isaac Remington, a man who stirred feelings in her that she'd long thought dead. Feelings that complicated her carefully constructed life. Before she could respond, the door burst open, and Lily stumbled in, her face pale with fright. Mama, there's a man watching the cabin. I saw him in the trees. Isaac was on his feet instantly, reaching for the rifle that hung above the door. Stay inside, he ordered, his expression grim as he strode out into the snow. Naomi pulled Lily close, her heart racing. What did he look like? This man. Tall, Lily whispered, with a big coat and a hat pulled low. He was standing very still, just watching. A chill that had nothing to do with the winter air ran down Naomi's spine. Had he found them? After all this time, had he tracked them to this remote corner of Wyoming? The minutes stretched endlessly until Isaac returned, stomping snow from his boots. I found tracks, he said gravely. Heading east, toward the pass. Whoever it was, they're gone now. Probably just a trapper, Naomi suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Isaac's eyes narrowed. Naomi, are you in some kind of trouble? No, she said too quickly. Of course not. But the fear in her eyes told a different story, one that heightened Isaac's protective instincts and his determination to discover what exactly this remarkable woman was hiding. The stranger's appearance changed everything. Though Isaac found no further signs of the mysterious watcher in the days that followed, Naomi could no longer ignore the vulnerability of their isolated cabin. 2 nights after the incident, as snow piled against the walls and the roof groaned ominously under its weight, she made her decision. We'll accept your offer, she told Isaac when he arrived the next morning with more supplies. But I have conditions. Isaac, who had been prepared for another refusal, tried to hide his relief. Name them. We'll live in separate quarters, not the main house, Naomi began. I'll provide medical care for your ranch hands, but I maintain the right to leave with no notice if circumstances require it. Isaac frowned. The separate quarters I understand, but the leaving without notice is non-negotiable, Naomi finished firmly. Those are my terms. For a long moment, Isaac studied her face. Whatever he saw there must have convinced him of her resolve. Agreed, he said finally. There's a small caretaker's cottage near the main house. It has 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and a solid roof. It's yours for as long as you need it. Relief washed over Naomi, followed immediately by apprehension. Moving to the rocking meant placing her trust in Isaac Remington, something she hadn't done with any man since fleeing Philadelphia 7 years ago. What about Indigo? She asked, grasping at practical concerns to calm her racing thoughts. He's not ready to travel. My men will build a travois, Isaac explained. We'll move him slowly, with plenty of rest. The ranch has a warm stable where he can continue his recovery. Lily, who had been listening from her spot by the fire, could contain her excitement no longer. When do we leave, Mr. Remington? Will I really get to go to school? Are there other children? Isaac grinned at the barrage of questions. We'll leave tomorrow, if your mother agrees. And yes, there are 5 other children at the school, ranging from 6 to 12. Our teacher, Miss Winters, will be delighted to have a new student. Naomi watched her daughter's face light up and knew, despite her misgivings, that she'd made the right choice. For years, she'd denied Lily the companionship of other children, the stability of a proper home. All to keep them safe, to keep them hidden. But children needed more than safety. They needed to grow, to learn, to form connections. And perhaps, Naomi admitted to herself, so did she. The next morning dawned clear and bitingly cold. Isaac arrived with 3 wagons and 4 men, including his foreman, a weather-beaten man named Orville Jenkins who regarded Naomi with undisguised curiosity. Miss O'Connor, Jenkins said, touching the brim of his hat. Boss says you're some kind of doctor. I have medical training, Naomi confirmed, busy directing the men who were carefully loading her few possessions onto the first wagon. Jenkins rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. Well, that'll be a blessing. Last month, Pete Rollins near cut his arm off with an axe. We had to cauterize it ourselves. He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a badly healed burn. Could use your opinion on this, when you're settled. Naomi examined the wound with professional detachment. It's infected, she said. I'll need to clean it properly and apply a poultice. Do you have medicinal herbs at the ranch? Got whatever grows wild. Jenkins shrugged. Though the boss has been ordering all sorts of supplies from Laramie since he found you. This revelation surprised Naomi, and she glanced toward where Isaac was carefully supervising the construction of the travois for Indigo. He'd been planning for her arrival even before she agreed. The thought was both unsettling and strangely warming. The journey to the rocking took most of the day. They moved slowly because of Indigo, stopping frequently to check his splinted leg and allow him to rest. Lily rode in the lead wagon with Isaac, her excitement undiminished by the cold or the rough trail. From her seat in the second wagon, Naomi watched their interaction with mixed emotions. Isaac treated Lily with genuine kindness, answering her endless questions with patience and often making her laugh with stories about the ranch animals. It was clear her daughter was already growing attached to him, a complication Naomi hadn't fully anticipated. As they crested the final ridge, the rocking spread before them. Naomi's eyes widened at the sight. The ranch was far larger than she'd imagined. A sprawling main house of solid timber construction, several barns and outbuildings, corrals, and in the distance, grazing lands that seemed to extend to the horizon. It's a small empire, Jenkins commented, noting her expression. Boss built most of it himself, starting with just 100 acres and a dream. There was unmistakable pride in his voice. His pa died when he was 18, left him nothing but debts and a broken-down shack. Now he's got the finest spread in 3 counties. This glimpse into Isaac's past intrigued Naomi. She'd assumed he came from wealth, that his success had been inherited rather than earned. The knowledge that he'd built his ranch from nothing changed her perception of him slightly. Does he have family? She asked, trying to sound casual. Jenkins shook his head. No parents, no siblings. Married once, years ago, but she died in childbirth, along with the baby. He glanced at Naomi. Never seemed interested in remarrying, till now. Mr. Remington and I have a purely professional arrangement, Naomi said quickly, her cheeks warming despite the cold. Jenkins chuckled. If you say so, ma'am. But I've worked for Isaac Remington for 8 years, and I ain't never seen him build a shelter for a horse before, or visit the same cabin every day for weeks. Naomi had no response to that, and they continued in silence as the wagons made their way down to the ranch proper. As they approached, people emerged from various buildings to watch their arrival. Ranch hands, a cook in a white apron, a dignified woman who must be the teacher, and several curious children. Isaac helped Lily down from the wagon with exaggerated ceremony, making the girl giggle. Then he turned to assist Naomi, his strong hands spanning her waist as he lifted her effortlessly to the ground. For a brief moment, they stood close enough that Naomi could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could feel the warmth of his breath against her cheek. "Welcome to the rocking R," he said softly, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "I hope you and Lily will be happy here." Naomi stepped back, flustered by her body's reaction to his proximity. "Thank you for your hospitality," she managed, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. Isaac seemed about to say something more when Jenkins approached with a telegram in hand. "Boss, this just arrived from Laramie. Sheriff Stone needs to speak with you. Urgent, he says." A shadow crossed Isaac's face as he read the message. "I need to ride into town," he said, his voice tight. "Jenkins will show you to the cottage and make sure you have everything you need." "Is everything all right?" Naomi asked, concerned by his sudden change in demeanor. "Just business," Isaac assured her, though something in his eyes suggested otherwise. "I'll be back by morning. Please, make yourself at home." Before Naomi could respond, he'd mounted his horse and was galloping toward the main road, leaving her wondering what urgent matter could take him away so abruptly, and why the mention of Sheriff Stone had caused such tension in his expression. As Jenkins led them toward a charming cottage nestled among pine trees, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that she'd traded one set of uncertainties for another. But watching Lily's face as she took in their new home, with its solid roof and glass windows, she knew she'd do whatever necessary to give her daughter this chance at a normal life, even if it meant risking her heart and her secrets in the process. The caretaker's cottage exceeded Naomi's expectations. Though small, it was solidly built, with 2 bedrooms, a cozy sitting area, and a kitchen equipped with an actual cast-iron stove rather than the open hearth she'd used at the cabin. Best of all was the luxury of a pump inside the house. No more trudging through snow for water. "This is wonderful, Mama," Lily exclaimed, bouncing on the bed in the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. "And look, shelves for my books." Naomi smiled at her daughter's excitement while unpacking their meager belongings. Jenkins had informed them that dinner would be served in the main house at 6, giving them time to settle in. Several ranch hands had already brought over firewood, and the cottage was warming nicely. As twilight approached, Naomi helped Lily change into her best dress, a hand-me-down from Mrs. Henderson's granddaughter, but clean and only slightly too large. Naomi herself had few options, settling on the blue dress she'd worn when Isaac first found them with his injured horse. "You look pretty, Mama," Lily said, watching her mother pin up her honey-blonde hair. "Thank you, sweetheart." Naomi hesitated, then knelt to meet her daughter's eyes. "Lily, remember what we talked about? About not sharing details of our life before Wyoming?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I remember. We don't talk about Philadelphia or about—" She stopped, her young face suddenly wary. "About him. That's right," Naomi said gently, smoothing Lily's dark curls. "It's our special secret. Mr. Remington has been very kind to offer us this home and the school for you, but our past is private. Because he might find us," Lily whispered. "He won't," Naomi said with more confidence than she felt, especially after the sighting of the mysterious watcher. "But it's better to be careful." Hand in hand, they made their way to the main house. In the gathering dusk, the rocking R looked even more impressive, with lamplight glowing from multiple windows and smoke curling from 2 stone chimneys. The veranda that wrapped around the front of the house was wide enough for several rocking chairs, currently unoccupied due to the cold. Jenkins met them at the door, looking somewhat uncomfortable in clean clothes with his hair slicked down. "Miss O'Connor, Miss Lily," he greeted them formally. "Mrs. Hoffman has prepared quite a feast in your honor." Inside, the house was as impressive as its exterior suggested. The entryway opened into a large living area dominated by a massive stone fireplace. Comfortable furniture, much of it clearly handcrafted, was arranged to take advantage of the warmth. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that made Naomi's fingers itch to explore them. A plump woman with iron-gray hair twisted into a severe bun emerged from what must be the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. "There you are. I'm Agatha Hoffman, housekeeper and cook." Her German accent was still pronounced despite what must have been years in America. "You must be hungry after your journey." Dinner was served in a formal dining room that could easily seat 20, though tonight only 6 places were set. One for Naomi, one for Lily, one for Jenkins, one for Mrs. Hoffman, one for Miss Winters the schoolteacher, and one at the head of the table that remained empty in Isaac's absence. The meal was the finest Naomi had eaten in years: roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, and vegetables preserved from the summer's harvest. Lily's eyes grew wide at the abundance, and Naomi had to gently remind her to take small portions. Miss Winters, a plain but pleasant-looking woman in her 30s, engaged Lily in conversation about her education thus far. "Your mother has taught you well," she said, impressed by Lily's reading abilities. "Most children your age are still struggling with basic letters." "Mama reads to me every night," Lily said proudly. "And she taught me multiplication all the way to 12 times 12. Miss Winters raised her eyebrows, looking at Naomi with new respect. "You're clearly educated yourself, Miss O'Connor. Mr. Remington mentioned you have medical training?" "I do," Naomi confirmed, uncomfortable with the attention. "My father was a physician in Pennsylvania." "How fortunate for us," Mrs. Hoffman interjected. "Last spring, Charlie Littleton broke his arm falling from a horse. We had to set it ourselves, and now the poor boy can hardly use it." She shook her head disapprovingly. "Ranching is dangerous work." "I'd be happy to examine Charlie's arm," Naomi offered. "Sometimes a break that hasn't healed properly can be reset." Jenkins winced. "Sounds painful." "It is," Naomi acknowledged, "but less painful than a lifetime of disability." The conversation continued pleasantly, though Naomi noticed the occasional curious glance from Mrs. Hoffman. Clearly, her arrival at the ranch had sparked speculation, particularly given Isaac's hasty departure. After dinner, as they prepared to return to their cottage, Mrs. Hoffman pulled Naomi aside. "Mr. Remington had these delivered for you," she said, handing over a large basket covered with a cloth. "He ordered them special from Laramie last week." Beneath the cloth, Naomi found an assortment of medical supplies: bandages, surgical instruments, bottles of antiseptic, and several medical texts. A folded note lay atop the collection. "Naomi, I hope these will be useful in your work. The blue building beyond the main barn has been prepared as your infirmary. My men have been instructed to bring their injuries to you rather than attempting their usual haphazard self-treatment. Please make any additional requests to Jenkins, who has an account at the general store in Laramie. I regret having to leave so abruptly and will explain upon my return. Yours, Isaac." The note, particularly the closing "yours," left Naomi with conflicting emotions. The supplies were professional and appropriate, but the personal tone of the message suggested a connection beyond employer and employee. Back at the cottage, after Lily was asleep, Naomi stood at the window gazing toward the main house. What urgent business had called Isaac to Laramie, and why had the name Sheriff Stone caused such tension? As she prepared for bed in the unfamiliar room, Naomi was acutely aware of how quickly her circumstances had changed. Just days ago, she and Lily had been isolated in their cabin, scraping by with barely enough food and constantly vigilant. Now they were ensconced in a comfortable cottage on a prosperous ranch, with regular meals and prospects for Lily's education. But comfort brought its own dangers. The more settled they became, the more connections they formed, the greater the risk of discovery. And then there was Isaac himself, handsome, kind, and far too observant for Naomi's peace of mind. As she drifted toward sleep, Naomi's last thoughts were of Isaac's expression when he'd lifted her from the wagon, the warmth in his brown eyes, the way his hands had lingered at her waist. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to acknowledge a simple truth. She was attracted to Isaac Remington, and that attraction could complicate everything. Isaac returned to the ranch just after dawn, his expression grim and his clothes travel-stained. He rode directly to the main house, where Jenkins was waiting on the porch despite the early hour. "Well?" Jenkins asked quietly as Isaac dismounted. "It's him," Isaac confirmed, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "Sheriff Stone received a telegram from Philadelphia. Edmund Blackwell is in Wyoming Territory, looking for a woman and child." Jenkins swore softly. "You think he's after Miss O'Connor and the little girl?" "I'm almost certain of it," Isaac said, leading his horse toward the barn. "The description matches: blonde woman with medical training, dark-haired child around 9 years old. And the timing fits with their arrival in the territory." "What does Blackwell want with them?" Isaac's expression darkened further. According to Stone, Blackwell claims to be Lily's father. Says his wife abducted the child and fled west 7 years ago. Jenkins let out a low whistle. So Miss O'Connor isn't a widow after all. I don't know what she is, Isaac admitted, unsaddling his horse with practiced movements. But I intend to find out. Stone says Blackwell has legal documents, a marriage certificate, Lily's birth record. What are you going to do, boss? Isaac paused, his hands stilling on the saddle. Protect them, he said simply. Whatever Naomi's running from, she has her reasons. I've seen how she cares for Lily, how she's scraped by all these years rather than returning east. He shook his head. No woman leaves comfort for hardship without cause. Blackwell could bring the law down on us, Jenkins warned. If he's got papers, I know the risks. Isaac cut him off. But I'm asking you to trust me on this, Jenkins. When Naomi's ready, she'll tell me the truth. Jenkins nodded slowly. You know I'm with you, boss. Always have been. He hesitated, then added, but she should know Blackwell's in the territory. For her own safety, if nothing else. I'll tell her, Isaac agreed. After I've had a chance to clean up. He glanced toward the caretaker's cottage, where smoke now rose from the chimney. How did they settle in? Just fine, Jenkins reported. The little one's excited about school, and Miss O'Connor seemed pleased with the medical supplies you arranged. She's already planning to look at Charlie Littleton's arm today. Isaac nodded, a hint of smile softening his worried expression. Good. That's good. He clapped Jenkins on the shoulder. Get some rest. I'll handle things from here. As Jenkins departed, Isaac led his horse into a stall, taking extra time with the grooming. He needed these moments to compose his thoughts, to decide exactly how much to tell Naomi about his trip to Laramie. Edmund Blackwell. The name turned over in Isaac's mind as he worked. Who was this man to Naomi? A husband she'd fled? Lily's father? The thought brought an unexpected surge of jealousy, which Isaac quickly suppressed. Naomi's past was her own business, except when it threatened to invade his ranch and harm people under his protection. After returning to the main house for a quick bath and change of clothes, Isaac made his way to the caretaker's cottage. The morning was clear but bitingly cold, his breath forming clouds in the air. He'd barely raised his hand to knock when the door opened, revealing Naomi in a simple gray dress, her hair tied back with a ribbon. Jenkins said you were back, she said by way of greeting. Lily's already left for her first day of school. Miss Winters came to collect her. May I come in? Isaac asked, struck anew by how the simple dress did nothing to diminish her beauty. Naomi hesitated, then stepped aside. Of course. Would you like coffee? Please, Isaac said, grateful for the delay it would provide. He needed to choose his words carefully. The cottage was already transformed by Naomi's presence. Fresh curtains hung at the windows, likely repurposed from something she'd brought from the cabin, and the few books they owned were arranged on the small shelf. A half-finished quilt was draped over the back of a chair, its intricate pattern suggesting hours of patient work. You've made it home already, Isaac observed, accepting the cup she offered. Lily was determined to unpack everything immediately, Naomi said with a small smile. She's never had so much space before. Isaac settled into a chair by the fire, watching as Naomi took the seat opposite him. I'm glad she's adjusting well. And you? How do you find the cottage? It's more than generous, Naomi said, as are the medical supplies. Thank you. You're welcome. Isaac took a sip of coffee, then set the cup aside. Naomi, there's something I need to discuss with you. It's why I was called to Laramie. She stiffened almost imperceptibly, her hands tightening around her cup. Oh, Sheriff Stone received a telegram from back east. A man named Edmund Blackwell has arrived in Wyoming Territory, looking for a woman and child. Isaac watched her face closely, noting how the color drained from her cheeks at the name. He claims to be searching for his wife and daughter, who he says left Philadelphia 7 years ago. Naomi's cup clattered against the saucer as she set it down with trembling hands. I see, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Is Edmund Blackwell your husband, Naomi? Isaac asked gently. For a long moment, she didn't respond. When she finally looked up, her green eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. Legally, yes, she admitted. But I haven't considered myself his wife since the night I fled with Lily. And Lily is his daughter? Biologically, Naomi said, rising to stand by the window, her back to Isaac. But in every way that matters, she's mine alone. He forfeited any right to her the night She broke off, her shoulders tense. Isaac waited, giving her space to continue or not, as she chose. The night he nearly killed us both, Naomi finally said, her voice flat. Edmund is a violent man. He hid it well before our marriage. He was charming, educated, from one of Philadelphia's finest families. My father was delighted when he asked for my hand. She gave a bitter laugh. The changes were gradual at first. Control over what I wore, whom I spoke to. Then came the accusations, the jealousy. She turned to face Isaac, her expression resolute despite the pain evident in her eyes. The first time he struck me, Lily was just an infant. I told myself it was an aberration, that he was under stress from his business. The second time, I made similar excuses. By the 10th time, I knew there would never be an end to it. Isaac's hands had clenched into fists as she spoke, but he kept his voice level. Why didn't you seek help? Surely your father. My father died before I realized the danger, Naomi explained. And Edmund was respected in Philadelphia society. He was careful never to leave marks where they would be visible. When I tried to confide in a friend once, she suggested I must be provoking him. Her laugh was hollow, perhaps by breathing too loudly. So you ran? Isaac said, understanding dawning. Not immediately, Naomi said, returning to her chair. I endured for years, trying to protect Lily, trying to find a legal way out. But there was none. A husband has absolute right to his wife and child in the eyes of the law. The night I finally fled, he had come home drunk, enraged over some imagined slight at his club. He went for Lily first, claiming she was being too noisy. Her voice broke, and Isaac had to restrain himself from going to her, sensing she needed to complete her story without interruption. I intervened. Naomi continued after a moment. He threw me against the wall hard enough to crack 2 ribs. While he was occupied with me, my maid smuggled Lily out of the house to a neighbor. When Edmund finally passed out, I gathered what money and valuables I could carry, collected Lily, and took the first train west. I've been running ever since. 7 years, Isaac murmured. And now he's found you. He's never stopped looking, Naomi said. I've moved at least a dozen times. Wyoming was supposed to be far enough, remote enough. She looked at Isaac directly. Now you know why I insisted on being able to leave without notice. If he finds us, he won't. Isaac interrupted. His decision made the moment he'd seen the fear in her eyes. Not while you're under my protection. You don't understand, Naomi said. Edmund is wealthy, influential. If he's here with legal documents, let him come, Isaac said with quiet confidence. This is my land, Naomi. My territory. Edmund Blackwell may have power in Philadelphia society, but here, he's just another Easterner who doesn't know the first thing about surviving in Wyoming. Naomi studied his face, wanting desperately to believe him, but afraid to hope. Why would you risk yourself for us? You barely know me. The question hung between them, charged with unspoken feelings that had been growing since that first meeting by the injured horse. Isaac rose and moved to kneel before her chair, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. I know enough, he said simply. I know you're brave, intelligent, and fiercely protective of your daughter. I know you've survived hardships that would break most people. And I know that in these past weeks, you've come to matter to me more than I thought possible. Tears filled Naomi's eyes. Isaac, I can't ask you to fight my battles. You didn't ask, he pointed out, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. I'm offering. My ranch, my rules. And rule number 1 is that everyone here is under my protection. He squeezed her hands gently. Do you trust me, Naomi? Did she? Trust was a luxury Naomi hadn't allowed herself in years. But looking into Isaac's earnest face, feeling the strength and gentleness in his hands, she found herself nodding. Yes, she whispered. God help me, I do. It wasn't a declaration of love. Neither of them was ready for that. But it was a beginning, a fragile bridge spanning the chasm between her past and whatever future might await them. For the first time in 7 years, Naomi allowed herself to imagine a life beyond mere survival, a life where she and Lily might actually belong somewhere. With someone. But Edmund Blackwell was still out there, drawing ever closer. And Naomi knew better than most that he would not easily surrender what he considered his property. Life at the Rocking R quickly settled into a rhythm that brought Naomi more happiness than she'd known in years. Lily thrived at the small school, making friends with the other children, and impressing Miss Winters with her quick mind. Naomi established her infirmary in the blue building Isaac had prepared, treating everything from minor cuts to broken bones among the ranch hands. True to his word, Isaac asked no further questions about her past, though Naomi often caught him watching her with an expression that suggested he was piecing together her story from the fragments she occasionally revealed. Their relationship remained ostensibly professional, but the undercurrent of attraction between them was impossible to ignore. 2 weeks after her arrival at the ranch, Naomi was returning from the infirmary when she noticed Isaac and Jenkins in deep conversation by the corral. From their serious expressions and the way they kept glancing toward the main road, she sensed the topic was significant. "Is something wrong?" she asked, approaching them. The men exchanged a look before Isaac answered. "One of our hands spotted a stranger asking questions in town yesterday. He was showing a photograph and offering money for information." Naomi's heart sank. "Edmund." Isaac nodded grimly. "The description matches what you told me. Tall, well-dressed Easterner with dark hair and a scar above his right eye." "The scar," Naomi murmured. "He got that in a duel when he was 20. He was always proud of it, said it gave him character." "Well, his character is getting closer," Jenkins said bluntly. "He's hired a local guide to take him to all the outlying ranches and homesteads." "How long?" Naomi asked, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. "A few days, maybe a week," Isaac replied. "The territory got hit with another snowstorm last night. It'll slow them down." Naomi nodded, her mind already racing ahead. "I should pack, get Lily." "No," Isaac said firmly, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Running now would be dangerous. The passes are treacherous after a snow. Besides, this is exactly what we prepared for." "What do you mean?" Isaac smiled grimly. "Why do you think I've had the men taking extra watches these past 2 weeks? Or why Jenkins and I personally rode the boundaries of the ranch each day?" His hands tightened slightly on her shoulders. "No one approaches the rocking R without us knowing about it. And I've made arrangements in town. Sheriff Stone understands the situation." "The sheriff is on your side?" Naomi asked skeptically. "Even knowing I essentially abducted Lily from her legal father?" "Stone's sister was in a situation similar to yours," Jenkins explained quietly. "Only she didn't escape in time. The sheriff has no love for men who abuse women and children, regardless of what the law might say about a husband's rights." Naomi absorbed this information, hope warring with her ingrained caution. "What do you propose?" "We continue as normal," Isaac said. "You and Lily stay close to the ranch buildings. If Blackwell shows up, I'll deal with him." "How?" Naomi pressed. "Edmund isn't easily intimidated, and if he has legal documents, documents mean nothing out here without force to back them up," Isaac interrupted. "And I think you'll find the balance of force strongly in our favor." He gestured to the bunkhouse, where several ranch hands were visible, all armed. "Every man on this ranch is loyal to me, and they all know enough of your story to stand with us." The thought of these hard-working men risking themselves for her and Lily was overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," Naomi admitted. "After years of facing this alone." "You're not alone anymore," Isaac said softly, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment, it seemed he might say more, might finally breach the careful distance they'd maintained. But Jenkins cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "Boss, Charlie's back from town with the mail," he said, nodding toward a young cowboy dismounting near the main house. Isaac reluctantly dropped his hands from Naomi's shoulders. "We'll continue this discussion later," he promised. "In the meantime, please stay within sight of the buildings." As Isaac strode toward Charlie, Naomi turned to Jenkins. "He's doing too much for us," she said quietly. "Risking too much." Jenkins studied her with shrewd eyes. "Boss doesn't do anything halfway, Miss O'Connor. Never has. When he sets his mind to something, or someone, he's all in." He paused, then added more gently, "And if you're worried he'll regret it, don't. I haven't seen him this alive in years." Before Naomi could respond, Lily came racing from the direction of the schoolhouse, her face alight with excitement. "Mama, Miss Winters says I can help teach the younger children their letters. And look what I made in class." She thrust a carefully drawn map toward Naomi. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Naomi said, momentarily setting aside her worries to admire her daughter's work. "Your mountains are especially well done. Mr. Remington has real maps in his study, Lily chattered. He showed me yesterday when I finished my lessons early. He says I have a Nat Ural eye for geography. This was news to Naomi. You were in Mr. Remington's study yesterday? Just for a little while, Lily assured her. He has books about everywhere, Mama. Even Philadelphia. Her expression clouded suddenly. I didn't tell him we used to live there. I remembered our secret. Naomi stroked her daughter's curls. That's good, Lily. You're very good at keeping secrets. She glanced toward the main house, where Isaac was deep in conversation with Charlie, gesturing toward the road. But you know, I think perhaps we don't need to keep quite so many secrets anymore. Not from Mr. Remington. Lily's eyes widened. You mean I can tell him about Philadelphia? And about? She lowered her voice to a whisper. About him. We'll talk about it together, Naomi promised. But yes, I think it might be time to share our story with Mr. Remington. He's been very kind to us. He likes you, Mama, Lily said with the straightforward perception of childhood. He looks at you the way Mr. Henderson looks at Mrs. Henderson. Naomi felt heat rise to her cheeks. That's different, Lily. Why? Lily persisted. Don't you like him too? It was a question Naomi had been avoiding even in the privacy of her own thoughts. Did she like Isaac Remington? The answer was far more complicated than her daughter could understand. Yes, she was attracted to him. His kindness, his quiet strength, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. But liking led to loving, and loving led to vulnerability. And vulnerability was something Naomi couldn't afford, not with Edmund drawing closer each day. It's complicated, sweetheart, she finally said. Now, why don't you show your map to Mrs. Hoffman? I'm sure she'll be very impressed. As Lily skipped off toward the main house, Naomi turned her gaze once more to Isaac. He was now studying a letter, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he read. Whatever news the mail had brought, it wasn't good. Later that evening, after Lily was asleep, a knock came at the cottage door. Naomi opened it to find Isaac standing on the porch, his face grim in the lantern light. May I come in? He asked. There's something we need to discuss. Naomi stepped aside, noting the tension in his shoulders, the tight line of his jaw. What is it? Isaac removed his hat, turning it in his hands, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. I received a letter today from a lawyer in Laramie. Edmund Blackwell has filed formal papers with the territorial court, claiming you abducted his child and stole his property when you fled Philadelphia. Naomi sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Property, she repeated bitterly. Of course. The jewelry I took to finance our escape. Family heirlooms, he claimed, though they were gifts. The jewelry is the least of the concerns, Isaac said, taking the chair opposite her. He's demanding Lily's return and has offered a substantial reward for information leading to your whereabouts. How substantial? Naomi asked, though she already knew the answer. Edmund's wealth was considerable, and he would spare no expense to recover what he considered his possessions, including his wife and daughter. $5,000, Isaac said quietly. The sum was staggering, more than most ranch hands would earn in a decade. Someone will talk, Naomi said, rising to pace the small room. For that kind of money, someone always talks. Which is why we need to prepare, Isaac agreed. The lawyer's letter suggests Blackwell already suspects you're in this area. It's only a matter of time before he comes to the rocking R. Naomi stopped pacing, a cold realization settling over her. I've put you all in danger. You, your ranch, your people. She shook her head. I can't allow that. Lily and I should leave tonight, while there's still time. And go where? Isaac challenged, rising to stand before her. The nearest town is 2 days' ride. The passes are snow-covered. You'd be exposed, vulnerable. Better than bringing Edmund's wrath down on you, Naomi insisted. You don't know him like I do, Isaac. He'll stop at nothing. Neither will I, Isaac said, his voice low and fierce. Not when it comes to protecting you and Lily. The raw emotion in his words stopped Naomi's protests. She looked up at him, really looked, and saw the determination in his eyes, the unwavering resolve. This wasn't merely about honor or obligation. This was personal for him in a way she hadn't fully comprehended until now. Why? She whispered. Why risk everything for us? Isaac was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving hers. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but certain. Because in the weeks since you arrived at the Rocking R, something has changed for me. I've spent years building this ranch, focusing on nothing but work. I told myself it was enough. He took a step closer. It wasn't. Not until you and Lily came into my life. Isaac. Naomi breathed, both yearning for and fearing what he might say next. I'm falling in love with you, Naomi, he said simply. And I think, perhaps, you might feel something for me too. The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable in a way that touched Naomi's carefully guarded heart. Yes, she had feelings for Isaac, feelings that had grown stronger with each passing day. But admitting them, acting on them, seemed impossible with Edmund's shadow looming so near. It doesn't matter what I feel, she said finally. Edmund will never let me go. Even if he doesn't want me for myself anymore, his pride won't allow it. I'm his property, just like the jewelry. Not here, Isaac said firmly. Not on my land. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek with gentle fingers. I'm not asking for promises, Naomi. I know your situation is complicated. I'm just asking you to trust me a little longer. Let me help you face this, together. His touch was warm against her skin, steadying in a way that made her want to lean into his strength. For 7 years, Naomi had carried her burdens alone, had made every decision with only Lily's safety in mind. The thought of sharing that weight, of having someone to stand beside her rather than having to be strong for everyone else, was almost overwhelming. I do trust you, she admitted, allowing herself to place her hand over his where it rested against her cheek. More than I've trusted anyone in a very long time. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was honest. And for now, it was enough. Isaac's smile was gentle as he lowered his hand, though he didn't step away. Then we'll face Blackwell together when he comes, he said. And in the meantime, we prepare. Starting tomorrow, I want you and Lily to stay in the main house during the day. It's more defensible, and you'll never be alone. Naomi nodded, recognizing the tactical wisdom in his plan. What about the school? Lily will be devastated if she can't attend. Miss Winters can conduct lessons in the main house study for a few days, Isaac suggested. The other children won't mind the change of venue, especially when Mrs. Hoffman bribes them with cookies. Despite her anxiety, Naomi found herself smiling at the image. You've thought of everything. I try, Isaac said, reaching for his hat. Get some rest, Naomi. Tomorrow we'll be busy. He was halfway to the door when Naomi called after him. Isaac, he turned, his expression questioning. Thank you, she said softly. Not just for the protection, but for. She hesitated, then finished simply, for seeing me. The real me, not just Edmund's runaway wife. Something flickered in Isaac's eyes, tenderness, perhaps, or a deeper emotion he wasn't ready to name. Good night, Naomi, he said, his voice warm in the quiet room. Sleep well. After he'd gone, Naomi stood for a long time looking out the window toward the main house, where a single lamp still burned in what she knew was Isaac's study. Sleep would be elusive tonight, with her thoughts divided between the approaching danger and the unexpected warmth that had bloomed in her heart at Isaac's words. I'm falling in love with you. 7 simple words that complicated everything, and yet somehow made the prospect of facing Edmund feel less daunting than it had just hours before. Edmund Blackwell arrived at the Rocking R 3 days later, on a morning so bitterly cold that the breath of the horses formed clouds that lingered in the still air. He came with 4 men, a lawyer from Laramie, a local guide, and 2 hard-faced individuals whose purpose was clear from the guns they wore prominently on their hips. Isaac was waiting on the porch of the main house when the riders approached, Jenkins and 3 ranch hands flanking him. Inside, Naomi watched through the window, Lily safely upstairs with Miss Winters and the other children. Even at a distance, the sight of Edmund sent a chill through Naomi that had nothing to do with the winter weather. He sat tall in the saddle, impeccably dressed despite the frontier conditions. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples now, but the arrogant tilt of his head was exactly as she remembered. That's him, she murmured to Mrs. Hoffman, who stood beside her with a shotgun partially concealed in the folds of her apron. He looks like a peacock, the older woman sniffed. Too pretty for his own good. Despite her fear, Naomi had to smile at the assessment. Edmund had always been vain about his appearance, spending more time at his toilette than most women of Naomi's acquaintance. Outside, the riders came to a halt a respectful distance from the house. Edmund surveyed the property with obvious disdain before focusing on Isaac. I'm looking for Isaac Remington, he called, his Philadelphia accent distinctive against the frontier backdrop. You found him, Isaac replied, his stance relaxed but alert. This is private property, Mr. Blackwell. State your business. Edmund's eyebrows rose slightly at being recognized. My reputation precedes me, I see. Word travels, Isaac said noncommittally, especially when a man offers $5,000 for information about a woman and child. Edmund's mouth curved in what might have been a smile on another man. On him, it was merely a baring of teeth. Direct, aren't you? Very well. I have reason to believe my wife and daughter are on your property. I've come to collect them and return them to civilization. From her vantage point, Naomi could see the tension in Isaac's shoulders, though his voice remained calm. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof these people are here? The lawyer beside Edmund produced a sheaf of papers. We have sworn statements from individuals who recognized Mrs. Blackwell and Laramie last month, he said, and legal documents establishing Mr. Blackwell's rights as husband and father. Papers don't mean much out here, Jenkins growled, especially when a man brings hired guns to back them up. Merely protection for a journey through uncivilized territory, Edmund said smoothly. Now, I grow tired of this conversation. Either produce my wife and child, or we shall be forced to search your property. You won't be searching anything, Isaac said, his hand resting casually near his holster. This is rocking our land, and no one comes onto it without my permission. Edmund's expression hardened. I don't think you understand the situation, Mr. Remington. I have legal authority. I understand perfectly, Isaac interrupted. A man who beats his wife and terrorizes his child has come looking to reclaim what he considers his property. Tell me, Mr. Blackwell, do those legal documents mention the broken ribs? The bruises? The fear that drove a woman to flee across a continent with nothing but what she could carry? A flash of genuine surprise crossed Edmund's face before his features settled into cold anger. My domestic arrangements are none of your concern. Naomi is my wife under the laws of God and man. The child is mine. If you're harboring them, you're committing a crime. The only crime I see, Isaac said quietly, is what you did to them, and I won't allow it to continue. For a tense moment, the two men stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Then Edmund gestured to the men beside him. Search the property, he ordered. Bring them to me. Before the men could move, the door behind Isaac opened, and Naomi stepped onto the porch. That won't be necessary, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm here, Edmund. Naomi felt rather than saw Isaac shift beside her, positioning himself slightly in front of her in a protective stance that spoke volumes. His hand found hers briefly, a reassuring squeeze before he let go. Edmund's eyes narrowed as he took in his wife's appearance. 7 years had changed her. The soft, sheltered girl he'd married was gone, replaced by a woman hardened by survival, her once delicate hands now strong and capable. Naomi, he said, his voice taking on the silky quality she'd learned to fear. You've led me on quite a chase. It's time to come home now. Where's Lily? Safe, Naomi replied. And we're not going anywhere with you, Edmund. Not today, not ever. Edmund's smile was cold. I don't think you understand your position, my dear. I have legal documents establishing my rights. The local authorities are aware of my claim. If you don't come willingly, I'll simply have you arrested for theft and kidnapping. On what grounds? Isaac challenged. The Wyoming Territory doesn't recognize a husband's absolute right to his wife's property or person. And as for kidnapping, a mother protecting her child from abuse isn't kidnapping in any civilized jurisdiction. The lawyer beside Edmund cleared his throat nervously. There is some legal ambiguity regarding custody in the territories, he admitted. But Mr. Blackwell's marriage is still legally binding, and, show him, Isaac, Naomi said suddenly, her eyes never leaving Edmund's face. Isaac reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded document, which he handed to the lawyer. Perhaps you'd like to review this before continuing, he suggested. The lawyer unfolded the paper, his expression shifting from confusion to surprise as he read. This is a decree of divorce, issued by Judge Wilson of the Wyoming Territorial Court. What? Edmund snatched the paper from his lawyer's hands, his face darkening with rage as he scanned the document. This is preposterous. Issued yesterday? On what grounds? Abandonment and cruelty, Isaac said calmly. Judge Wilson was quite sympathetic to Naomi's case, especially when presented with evidence of your violence. Evidence? What evidence? Edmund demanded. There is no evidence. Your own letters, Edmund, Naomi said quietly. The ones where you threaten what you do to me when you found me. I kept them all. Every threatening word you wrote over the years. Every time you managed to discover where we were hiding. She took a deep breath. And the testimony of the doctor who treated me the night I fled, who documented my injuries. He's still practicing in Philadelphia. Judge Wilson sent a telegram to confirm his statement. Edmund's face contorted with fury. This is impossible. A divorce cannot be granted without both parties present. It's a forgery, a trick. It's quite legal, I assure you, the lawyer said, examining the document more carefully. Wyoming Territory has some of the most progressive laws regarding divorce in the country. A woman can petition for divorce on grounds of cruelty without her husband's presence or consent. As for Lily, Isaac continued, the divorce decree grants full custody to Naomi, with no visitation rights for you. Judge Wilson was particularly disturbed by the account of your attack on a 2-year-old child. Edmund's hand moved toward his gun, but the gesture was checked by the immediate reaction of Isaac and his men, who had their weapons half drawn before Edmund's fingers even touched his holster. I wouldn't, Jenkins advised coldly. The boss is the best shot in 3 counties, and the rest of us ain't too shabby either. For a moment, Naomi thought Edmund might risk it anyway. His pride had always been his weakness. But the cold calculation in his eyes told her he was reassessing his position. This isn't over, he finally said, his gaze boring into Naomi. No backwater judge can dissolve a proper Philadelphia marriage. I'll challenge this in every court in the country if necessary. You're welcome to try, Isaac said. But in the meantime, you're trespassing on my land. I suggest you leave before I have my men escort you off the property in a manner you might find undignified. The threat was clear, and even Edmund wasn't fool enough to challenge it with the odds so obviously against him. With a last venomous look at Naomi, he reined his horse around sharply. You'll regret this, he spat. Both of you. The only thing I regret, Naomi called after him, finding her voice at last, is ever believing you could love anything but your own reflection, Edmund. As the riders departed, Isaac put a steadying arm around Naomi's waist. Are you all right? He asked quietly. She nodded, though her legs felt suddenly weak with the release of tension. The divorce, is it really legal? Completely, Isaac confirmed. I've been working with Judge Wilson since the day you told me about Edmund. Wyoming Territory has had women's suffrage since '69 and some of the most progressive divorce laws in the country. When the judge heard your story, he was determined to help. But Edmund will challenge it, Naomi said, watching the retreating riders. He won't give up so easily. Let him try, Isaac said with quiet confidence. The territorial courts are fiercely independent. They won't take kindly to an Easterner trying to override their authority. He turned to face her fully. Besides, I have friends in the territorial legislature. If necessary, we can strengthen the laws protecting women in your situation. Naomi looked up at him in wonder. You've thought of everything. Isaac smiled, though his eyes remained serious. Not everything. There's still the matter of Edmund's threat. He's not a man who accepts defeat gracefully. No, Naomi agreed. He isn't. Which is why I think you and Lily should remain at the main house for now, Isaac suggested. At least until we're certain he's left the territory. Naomi nodded, knowing he was right. Despite the legal victory, Edmund remained dangerous, perhaps more so now that he'd been publicly humiliated. As they walked back toward the house, where Lily was waiting anxiously with Mrs. Hoffman, Naomi felt both lighter and heavier than before. The divorce was a shield she'd never thought possible, a legal protection beyond her wildest hopes. But Edmund's parting words echoed in her mind, a reminder that some dangers couldn't be dispelled by mere documents. And then there was Isaac, solid, dependable Isaac, who had orchestrated her freedom without her knowledge, who had faced down Edmund without flinching. Isaac, who was falling in love with her. Isaac, whom she was falling in love with in return. The expected challenge to the divorce never materialized. 3 days after his confrontation at the Rocking R, Edmund Blackwell was involved in an altercation at a saloon in Laramie. Details were sketchy, but according to Sheriff Stone's telegram, Edmund had insulted a local rancher's wife and received a bullet in the shoulder for his trouble. He'll live, Isaac told Naomi as they sat in his study. The telegram spread between them. But he's in no condition to travel for at least a month. Stone says he's arranged passage back to Philadelphia as soon as Blackwell is well enough. He gave up remarkably easily, Naomi said, suspicious of anything involving her former husband. It's not like Edmund to retreat. A bullet has a way of clarifying one's priorities, Isaac observed dryly. Besides, Stone may have mentioned that if Blackwell continued to harass you, certain details of his conduct in Philadelphia might find their way into Eastern newspapers. Scandal is the one thing men like Edmund truly fear. Naomi smiled faintly. You've been busy. I told you I would protect you, Isaac said simply. I keep my promises. They were alone in the study, Lily having gone to bed hours earlier. In the 2 weeks since Edmund's departure, Naomi and Lily had remained at the main house, sharing a comfortable guest suite while maintaining a watchful vigilance for any sign of Edmund's return. The arrangement had brought Naomi and Isaac into closer proximity than ever before, sharing meals, evenings by the fire, and long conversations after Lily was asleep. Now, with the immediate threat seemingly past, Naomi found herself at a crossroads. The divorce meant she was truly free for the first time in her adult life. Free to make choices based on her own desires rather than fear. What will you do now? Isaac asked, as if reading her thoughts. Will you and Lily return to the cottage? Is that what you want? Naomi countered, studying his face in the lamplight. Isaac set aside the telegram, his expression serious. What I want, he said carefully, is whatever makes you happy. If that means returning to the cottage and continuing our arrangement as doctor and employer, I'll respect that. If it means you wish to leave the rocking R entirely and start fresh elsewhere, I'll provide whatever assistance you need. And if neither of those options is what I want? Naomi asked softly. Isaac's eyes met hers, hope warring with caution in their depths. Then I would ask what you do want, Naomi. It was a simple question with a complicated answer. What did she want? Security for Lily, certainly. A home, a purpose, the ability to use her medical skills. But beyond those practical considerations, what did Naomi want for herself? The answer came with surprising clarity. She wanted the man sitting across from her, his strength, his integrity, his unwavering support. She wanted the feeling of safety she experienced in his presence, not because he controlled her as Edmund had, but because he respected her autonomy while offering his protection. I want to stay, she said finally. Not as your employee, but as something more. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. These past weeks, living here, being part of your household, it's felt right, Isaac. Like coming home after years of wandering. Isaac's expression softened, hope overtaking caution. It's felt right to me, too. The house was too quiet before you and Lily came. Now it feels like a home again. He reached across the desk to take her hand. I meant what I said that night at the cottage, Naomi. I'm falling in love with you. Or perhaps I should say I have fallen in love with you. Completely. The words, spoken plainly and without pretense, touched Naomi deeply. I've been afraid to admit my feelings, she confessed. After Edmund, I swore I'd never let myself be vulnerable to a man again. I understand that, Isaac said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. And I'll never pressure you for more than you're ready to give. We can take this as slowly as you need. Naomi studied their joined hands, thinking of how different Isaac's touch was from Edmund's. Gentle where Edmund had been rough, asking where Edmund had demanded. I think, she said carefully, that I might be ready for more than I realized. Being here with you, watching you with Lily, seeing how you stood against Edmund without hesitation. It's awakened feelings I thought were dead. Naomi, Isaac breathed, her name almost a prayer on his lips. Are you saying, I'm saying I love you too? She interrupted, the words both frightening and liberating as they hung in the air between them. I've tried not to, try to keep my walls up, but you've dismantled them one by one with your kindness, your respect, your steadfast support. Isaac rose from his chair, moving around the desk to kneel beside her, still holding her hand. I promise you, he said, his voice low and intense, that I will spend every day earning that love, honoring your trust. I will never raise a hand to you in anger, never attempt to control you or diminish you. I know, Naomi said simply because she did. In the weeks she'd known Isaac Remington, she'd seen him under pressure, seen him face danger, seen him interact with those dependent on him. In every situation, he had shown the same steady character, the same fundamental decency. "There's something I've wanted to ask you," Isaac continued. "But I was waiting for the right moment, waiting until you felt safe enough." He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "This was my mother's. She made me promise to give it only to a woman of courage and conviction, someone I respected as much as I loved." He opened the box to reveal a ring, not ostentatious like the jewelry Edmund had given her, but a simple, elegant design of gold with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "Naomi Elizabeth Oswald, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not because you need my protection or because it's practical, but because we love each other and want to build a life together." Naomi looked from the ring to Isaac's face, finding there everything she'd ever wanted in a partner: respect, admiration, desire, and above all, love that asked nothing in return but the same. "Yes," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "Yes, I would be honored to be your wife." Isaac slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to draw her to her feet and into his arms. Their first kiss was gentle, a question more than a demand, but when Naomi responded by winding her arms around his neck, Isaac deepened the kiss with a passion that left them both breathless. "I've wanted to do that since the day I found you kneeling beside my injured horse," he admitted when they finally parted. Naomi laughed softly. "Even covered in mud with my hair coming undone?" "Especially then," Isaac assured her. "You were so fierce, so determined to help Indigo despite having no reason to care about a stranger's horse. I think I started falling in love with you in that moment." Naomi touched his face, wonder filling her at the knowledge that this good man loved her, wanted to marry her. "What will we tell Lily?" Isaac grinned. "If I know Lily, she'll ask what took us so long. She's been dropping hints for weeks, asking if I'd like to be her new papa, telling me how pretty you look when you smile." "She's not exactly subtle," Naomi agreed with a fond smile. "She adores you, you know." "The feeling is mutual," Isaac said. "She's an extraordinary child, Naomi. You've raised her with such courage and love, despite everything." The mention of Lily brought a more practical concern to mind. "Isaac, there's something we should discuss before we make any formal announcements." "My divorce is completely legal," he assured her. "I had Judge Wilson double-check all the precedents. Even if Edmund challenges it in Eastern courts, the Wyoming Territory's jurisdiction is clear. You're free to remarry whenever you wish." Relief washed over Naomi. "Then I wish to marry you as soon as possible," she said decisively. "I've wasted too many years in fear. I don't want to waste another day." Isaac's smile was radiant. "What about a Christmas wedding? It's only 3 weeks away. The whole ranch could celebrate with us, and it would give Mrs. Hoffman time to prepare one of her legendary feasts." "Christmas," Naomi repeated, imagining the main house decorated with evergreens, candles glowing in the windows, Lily in a new dress. "It's perfect." As they sealed the agreement with another kiss, Naomi felt the last shadows of her past recede. Edmund might still be out there somewhere, nursing his wounds and his pride, but he no longer had power over her. Not legally, not emotionally. For the first time in 7 years, Naomi allowed herself to look toward the future with unalloyed hope. A future with Isaac, with Lily, with the extended family of the Rocking R. A future where she could use her medical skills to help others, where she could watch her daughter grow up surrounded by love and support. A future that had begun the day a little girl stopped to help an injured horse on a muddy trail, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead, ultimately, to healing far beyond what Naomi had ever dared to dream. The Christmas wedding of Isaac Remington and Naomi Oswald was the social event of the season in Clearwater Valley. The main house of the Rocking R was transformed with evergreen boughs, red ribbons, and dozens of candles that cast a warm glow over the proceedings. Judge Wilson came from Laramie to perform the ceremony, bringing news that Edmund Blackwell had indeed returned to Philadelphia, his ambitions in the Wyoming Territory thoroughly thwarted. Lily, resplendent in a new green dress that matched her mother's eyes, served as maid of honor, her face solemn with the importance of her role until the moment Isaac and Naomi were pronounced husband and wife. Then she broke into a radiant smile and threw her arms around them both, creating a family embrace that drew appreciative chuckles from the assembled guests. The celebrations continued well into the evening, with dancing, feasting, and toasts to the happy couple. Late in the night, as the party showed no signs of abating, Isaac drew Naomi away from the crowd and onto the veranda, where the crisp winter air provided a refreshing contrast to the warmth inside. "Happy, Mrs. Remington?" he asked, wrapping his arm around her waist and drawing her close against the cold. "Deliriously," Naomi confirmed, leaning into his embrace. "Though I'm still getting used to the name. 7 years as Naomi O'Connor makes Remington feel strange on my tongue." "You could have kept Oswald," Isaac said. "I wouldn't have minded." Naomi shook her head. "No, I want your name. I want to be part of your family in every way." She glanced through the window to where Lily was teaching one of the younger ranch children a dance step, her face animated with joy. "We both do." "Speaking of family," Isaac said, his tone casual though his eyes were intent on her face, "I've been thinking about the future. Specifically, about expanding ours." Naomi looked up at him, understanding dawning. "You want children?" "I'd like that very much," Isaac admitted. "But only if you want them too. I know your experience with Edmund was nothing like my experience with you." Naomi interrupted gently. "And yes, I would love to have children with you, Isaac. Lily has been asking for a sibling since she was 4. She smiled, remembering. She used to pray for a brother or sister every night. I had to explain that some prayers take longer to answer than others. Isaac's eyes softened. "And now I think her prayers might be answered sooner rather than later," Naomi said, taking his hand and placing it gently against her abdomen. "If my calculations are correct, and as a medical professional, I'm quite confident they are, we should welcome a new Remington around midsummer." For a moment, Isaac stared at her in disbelief. Then his face broke into a smile of such radiant joy that it took Naomi's breath away. "A baby? You're certain?" "As certain as one can be at this stage," Naomi confirmed. "I've been suspecting for a few weeks, but wanted to be sure before I told you. Consider it a Christmas gift." Isaac gathered her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in his enthusiasm. "The best gift I could imagine," he said when he finally set her down. "Though I'd say you and Lily already gave me the greatest gift when you agreed to stay at the Rocking R." "And to think," Naomi mused, "it all began with an injured horse on a muddy trail. If Indigo hadn't broken his leg that day, we would have found each other some other way," Isaac said with conviction. "Some things are meant to be, Naomi. I believe that now more than ever." As they stood together under the starlit sky, Naomi reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the terrified young woman fleeing Philadelphia with a toddler in her arms to the confident, loved woman she was today, secure in her husband's embrace and anticipating a joyful future. The road had been long and often treacherous, marked by fear and hardship. But it had led, ultimately, to the Rocking R, to Isaac, to home, and for the little girl who had once helped an injured horse, and the mother who had found the courage to begin again. That was a journey worth every step.